Dan Dickau here for the WCC Weekly on the Gonzaga Nation Media Network. Well, what an ending to the regular season in the WCC. We've got the final bracketing, the final pairings for the WCC tournament that kicks off at the end of this week in Las Vegas at the Orleans Casino and Resort, just off the strip. It's the 11th year that the tournament's been held there. I think it's been a really good change in venue from going from a campus arena that was set. Many times it was set at Santa Clara, many times at LMU, many times at USD, and then they changed it in the WCC for a while to the top seed would host the conference tournament. The only problem with that is for fans to travel to on last minute. Travel itineraries made it very difficult, very expensive. So when they went a little over 10 years ago to just the complete neutral site in Las Vegas, I think it was a big time move by the WCC, spurred a lot of interest. Many Zag fans that don't live in Spokane, that don't live in a city where there is a WCC team and get a chance to see the Zags every year, make it a point to get to Vegas for the conference tournament. So the crowds are always great. The other cool thing about it is the fact that Vegas, like it or love it, spending time in Vegas is literally the basketball capital of the world for about 10 days. You got the WCC tournament that's first, then the other conference tournaments that you will have down there is the Mountain West, the Pac-12, the WAC, and I believe the Big West. So just an unbelievable week of basketball going on at all different arenas. Thomas and Mack, Orleans, MGM Grand, T-Mobile, and then down south in Henderson is where the Big West is held. But big time week coming up, very fun week. I'm going to break down a little bit of the bracket, especially the early rounds before we get into where Gonzaga gets that triple bye alongside St. Mary's, because they shared the conference tournament title and they're the 1 and 2 seeds. They get a triple bye all the way till next week, next Monday. So we'll talk about the games leading up. I'll give you my predictions, my thoughts on who's going to win. But first, that Gonzaga St. Mary's game on Saturday was unbelievable. Gonzaga came out with a ton of energy, a ton of focus, a great attention to detail, in particular on the defensive end of the floor. That 1-2-2 3/4 court press was probably employed for, I would guess, about 35 minutes of the game. And I thought it was a great coaching decision by Coach Few and staff, because really what that did is St. Mary's wants to play slow anyways. But when you let them just walk it up and play slow on their own, they're going to get into multiple actions where you have to be alert and you have to defend pick and rolls, down screens, split screens, post ups, wide pin downs. You've got to guard all these actions. And so, over the course of a normal possession, if you're not the aggressor on that possession, you might guard 3 ball reversals. You might guard 8 to 9 screens. Well, physically as a defender, you're taking a pounding that whole possession. You're getting hit by screens. You're getting nicked. You're having to make decisions, and that wears on you, and that is difficult. By going to the 1-2-2 3/4 zone press, you're essentially putting a stop sign, or at least a yellow blinking light at St. Mary's. And so they don't have the full shot clock to work with to put your defense into actions that have to guard. You might only have to guard for 10 or 11 seconds. You might have to guard to one action. If you guard it well, then all of a sudden you just know you're having to guard a pick and roll. So you go from having to guard probably 5 or 6 actions to probably 2 at the most, because St. Mary's was even methodical and slow attacking Gonzaga's press. And a lot of that's by design with how they play. But what Gonzaga's press did in particular in the first half, where they forced 8 turnovers, is they were the aggressors. They had St. Mary's on their heels. They got up. They put the emphasis on that the game was going to be played on Gonzaga's terms, and it was for the most part of the game. Gonzaga got up 19 early in that second half before Aiden Mahaney had an 8-point stretch, a little mini run of his own, and I think they cut it to about 5 or 6 down the stretch. But really, in the end, it was 2. Gonzaga was unbelievably disciplined that day. They got great performances by Malachi Smith off the bench. Drew Timme was really good again. I thought Rajir Bolton didn't shoot it well, but I thought defensively it was good. I thought Nolan Hickman was solid. Anton Watson had another terrific game. But for St. Mary's, Logan Johnson, just unbelievable. Another upper 20s point game. I think he finished with 27. So over his last 6 games now, he's gone for over 20, or excuse me, over 30 twice. He's gone in the upper 20s 3 times, and then the one game sandwich in there that wasn't very good. He had a 3-point output. So because Gonzaga won, it's a share of the WCC title. That makes it 11 years in a row for Gonzaga. That's absolutely incredible. They also set a record of 16 consecutive years with 25 wins or more. NCAA record. That's pretty cool. If you're a Gonzaga fan or affiliated with the program, it shows you just the continued level of excellence and success that they have had. But a lot of people were asking, so if Gonzaga won the title, who's the 1 seed if it's a tie? Because it is a tie. Well, how they determined the tie is they went back and looked head-to-head meetings. Well, they split the head-to-head meetings. Okay, so each team also had one other loss in league. Gonzaga's loss was to LMU. St. Mary's loss was to LMU. So they go to the next tiebreaker. And the next tiebreaker was who was the higher-ranked team in the net after that game was played and the net rankings were updated. And so that being said, the later that day, that rankings were updated. St. Mary's was still above Gonzaga. So St. Mary's is the 1 seed at the WCC conference tournament. Gonzaga is the 2 seed. I don't think it matters much. The only thing that matters is that semifinal game you're going to play later in the night. So you will have about 2 hours less recovery time if you win to get ready for the title game the next day. But I don't think that's a big deal. Let's look at the conference tournament now and the matchups and what I see that will be that will occur down in Las Vegas. So in the 8-9 game, you've got the Portland Pilots against USD, the Toreros. Portland started off the season with a lot of expectations after how they were last year under Shante Leggins in year 1. Those expectations got juiced after they played really well in the PK 85. They battled a ton of injuries this year, but they're a dangerous team because they've got a lot of size, they've got a lot of versatility, a lot of parts that can be interchangeable. Moses Wood's a really good player. Christian Scholen's a really good player. Mike Meadows at the guard is a really good player. And I don't think they ever fully hit their stride this year. USD, on the other hand, they're one of the most experienced teams in all of college basketball under head coach Steve Lavin in his first year, but that experience didn't translate to wins. With 12 new players, I think Steve Lavin was probably thinking we get some experience, we can compete in the league, maybe challenge for a middle of the pack finish if things go well. Well, they battled injuries like crazy, probably even more so than Portland, and maybe more so than any team in the league. 14 different starting lineups throughout the course of the year. Marcellus Earlington, good scorer, but he's been banged up. Jace Townsend, good scorer, but he's been banged up. Jaden Dallaire has been injured multiple times this year. He's now out for the year. So what I look for in this game, I think Portland's going to win. I think Portland then will advance on to play the 5 seed BYU after they win that first opening round game. So I look for Portland to advance there. At least I do. The second opening round game would be the Pacific Tigers as the 7 seed taking on 10 seed Pepperdine. There was a couple weeks back, there was a time where Pacific was fighting for the 4th place in the league. They had a couple really nice wins. They had a couple really nice performances. They play Gonzaga pretty tough down in Stockton. You know, they play a unique style right now where they don't have a ton of size, so they play at times 5 guards, or maybe not 5 guards, but they'll play 5 guys who can space it, shoot it from the 3-point line, have some versatility to their game, attack you off the dribble. Jaden Ivan Curry's had a good year, scoring in double figures quite consistently. They've got some tremendous 3-point shooters. They had a game earlier this year. I think they hit 19 threes. So they really focus in on spacing you out, attacking you, getting you in rotations, and then being ready to knock it down from 3. But they'll play a Pepperdine team who really didn't meet expectations at all. The talent level that Pepperdine has, they should not have been in the 10th place. But the crazy thing is you get to the postseason, slate's wiped clean, and you've got a chance to start afresh. That being said, I don't see Pepperdine winning this game. As much talent as they have with Maxwell Lewis, Javon Porter, whenever I've watched them, they haven't played with a sense of purpose. At least the players haven't. And so I'm going to pick Pacific knocking off Pepperdine in that first opening round game and moving on to play the Dons of USF in that second round. Moving now to that game where you look at Portland versus BYU. That's an interesting one because BYU could have fallen all the way down to the 7 seed had they not had a good finish to the regular season by winning on Saturday. So they're at the 5 seed. I think they'll play against Portland. In that matchup, I'm going to take BYU. I think Mark Pope is a good coach. I think they've been kind of been hit a little bit by that over expectations, because when you look at the totality of their roster, I don't think there's as much talent on that BYU team this year as there has been in years past. There's no Yoli Childs, Jake Toolson. There's no Haas brothers out there, and so they've struggled at times this year to score. They've struggled at times to defend, but I think they're a program that plays with a lot of pride. I think Mark Pope will have them ready, and I would expect, and this is my expectation, I would expect BYU to knock off Portland after I think Portland knocks off USD. Moving forward to the bottom half of the bracket, the Dons of USF, I think, will take on Pacific. My money would be on USF in that game. I think in postseason play in the NCAA tournament, in conference tournaments, you got to have great guard play. And if you have great guard play, you got a chance to advance. And I look at San Francisco, although their guard play can be inconsistent at times, if either one of their 2 guards get it going, they can really get it going. And that would be Tyrell Roberts and Khalil Shabazz. So I'm going to take USF over Pacific in that game. Moving back up to the top of the bracket, the 4 seed LMU, I have taking on BYU after I think BYU will knock off Portland, who I thought would knock off USD. And that brings up an interesting game because, when BYU came into this league, there was thought that they were going to be the heavy hitters. They were going to be the ones that were winning league titles. Lo and behold, they never won a league title all of these years in the league. And last year in the league, before they moved to the Big 12, a disappointing 5th place finish. And a lot of it is because upstart LMU came in and really handled business against the top teams in the league. LMU, the only team since BYU came in to beat Gonzaga and St. Mary's in the same season. Now, LMU had some disappointing losses and some inconsistencies that I had talked with Stan Johnson on a couple different occasions. But when you've got a player like Cam Shelton, who has given everybody in the league fits, you've got a chance to win games in the postseason, just like I talked about with the backcourt of USF with Roberts and Shabazz. But Cam Shelton is even more of that type of guy. He's had 40 points at least once. I think he's had 4 30-point games. He's been on a tear the second half of conference play. He's been playing really well. So in the matchup of BYU LMU, I think LMU is going to win that one. on a neutral site floor. And I think they will take on St. Mary's in the top half of the bracket in the semifinals for next week, which we'll talk about on next week's WCC Weekly. On the bottom half of the bracket, Santa Clara is the 3 seed. I think they're an unbelievably overlooked team. They had a stretch in the middle of the season where they struggled, but they finished winning 6 or 7 straight in the WCC to lock up that 3 seed. They've got some really good talent. Brandon Pajimski, he could be newcomer of the year. Now, the WCC is interesting because the newcomer of the year can be a transfer or it can be a freshman. If you go straight freshman, it's Aiden Mahaney. If you go newcomer of the year, Pajimski's got to get some consideration. He averages 20 points a game. He averages close to double-figure rebounds. He's had some monster games where he's really performed at a high level, and he's done that throughout the year. He's a wing that's got great size and just knows how to play and competes. Other guys, Keyshawn Justice, fifth-year senior, Carlos Stewart, a really good sophomore guard. Then they got good size in Bediako and Braun on the interior. So in that matchup with USF and Santa Clara, I think it's going to be Santa Clara winning that one because I think Brandon Pajimski just won't allow them to lose. He wants another crack at Gonzaga. And I think Herb Sendek, I don't think they're going to end up being able to get all the way to the title game, win it, get to the NCAA tournament. They should be in the NIT, but Herb Sendek deserves a lot of credit for what he is doing with Santa Clara over these last 7 years now. There you have it. WCC Weekly. The league kicks off in Orleans, in Las Vegas, the Orleans Casino and Resort, with the WCC Conference Tournament later this week. The league will announce their player of the year, their newcomer of the year, their coach of the year, and their all-league teams. Adam Morris and I went through ours last week on last week's episode, but it's going to be interesting to see. Does the league name Timmy player of the year? By chance, is it Cam Shelton? Maybe Brandon Pajimski with a 3rd place finish at Santa Clara. Might it be Aiden Mahaney, the freshman from St. Mary's, or could it be Logan Johnson, who finished the last 6-7 games as well as you would hope to finish out your senior year? There's a lot of interesting questions as far as awards go in the in the WCC this year. So for the WCC Weekly and Gonzaga Nation Media Network, I'm Dan Dickau. Thanks for listening. Catch you next week.